Do you want to learn how to create crazy rotoscope effects just like these ones without any paid plugins inside of After Effects? Because I've just created like over 25 of these effects, and in this tutorial I'll be breaking down 3 of them. And I know it might look like it, but they actually don't use third-party plugins like Sapphire, Universe. So in this tutorial I'll be breaking it all down step by step, every single effect I've used, and just a whole lot of sauce. So let's get right into it. So I'm in After Effects right now. I got 3 compositions right here of this LaserD music video, and I've already rotoscoped out my subject, so we'll be skipping that part so we can save a little bit of time. But if you don't know how to rotoscope, I'll leave a tutorial linked in the description that I've made, where I just go through everything about rotoscoping, like how you make it look smooth, what effects I put on top of it, like this refine soft matte, and yeah, just some general knowledge. But I got my subject layer right here and my background layer right here, and then I've also got an adjustment layer. And to this adjustment layer, we can start off by adding on a motion tile. And this motion tile, I'll be changing the output width and height to 300. And check mirror edges as well. And then I'll add on a flow motion effect. And this effect is actually a sick one. All we gotta do is press this icon right here and then set the knot to the middle, like right behind our subject. And then I'll turn up the knot 1 amount up to something like this, or maybe even higher, like all the way up to 300. So we can get this really trippy look. But I will keyframe that amount, and I'll move this keyframe in like half a second. And my clip is pretty short, but I'll move it in half a second, and then here at the start I'll turn it down to 0. And after keyframing it, I'll go in like half a second, and my clip is pretty short, but it doesn't really matter. And I'll turn down the amount 1 to 0. Or actually I'll move the keyframe all the way to the end. Might as well do that. And now we got this going on. Fucking hell, scared the shit out of me. Now we got this going on. And we'll mess a lot with the graph editor in a second. But next we can add on a tritone effect. And for this video, I think I'll go for like a green color, something like this. And if you don't want to have any color on this effect, then you just skip the tritone effect. But it will look really good when we add on that kind of vortex look. So next I'll add on a Displacer Pro, and this effect is a plugin, but it's a completely free one, and it takes like 2 minutes to download. So I'll leave it linked in the description so you can go and grab it yourself. But for the Translate X, I'll bump it up to 125. And for the Rotate, I'll drag it down to -80, just like this. And then I'll keyframe both of those values. And then we're also gonna head down to Edge Behavior right here and select Mirror Repeat, just like that. And then I'll go all the way to the end like we did last time and drag both of these values down to 0. Next up, I'll add on a Turbulent Displace, and I'll keep the amount at 142 and bump up the size to 300. And then I'll keyframe the amount, of course, and go all the way here and turn it down to 0. And I forgot to mention that you can also keyframe the Blend with Original in your tritone effect. And here at the end, we can bump it up all the way to 100, and that green color will be gone. Now this effect looks a little bit like, kind of just like a mess right now, but we'll add on a twirl effect. And this is the effect that I use to get this kind of rotation, as you can see. And I'll drag it up to like 2 and 170, something like that. And then keyframe the angle, and I'll turn down the twirl radius to 20. So we'll have a more intense twirl and go all the way to the end. And here I'll drag it down to 0, and this one to 0 as well. And now before we mess with the graph editor, I just want to add on a few final tweaks, like a glow, just to get some depth onto this and make it look a little bit better. And for the glow radius, I'll bump it up to 200. And the glow threshold, I'll keep it at 70. And then I'll keyframe the glow intensity at 1. And here at the end, I can drag it down to 0. Just like that. And then the final effect that I'll add on is a radial blur, just to enhance that kind of trippy distortion look. And I'll bump up the radial blur to 20. And here at the end, keyframe it down to 0. Now I'll open up the graph editor and I'll select all of the keyframes and press F9 to ease them. And we can actually use the Flow plugin just to do this a little bit quicker for the sake of this tutorial. This is not my plugin and I'm not sponsored by them, but this plugin just helps you create graphs for your effects. So I just selected all of my keyframes and I'll go for a graph that looks something like this. And this is also what you should go for in your effects. And then I'll just press Apply Curves and it's applied onto my effects. Maybe it's a little bit too fast since the clip is a little bit short. So I'll go for something like that and just press Apply to All and select Overwrite. So for your effects, if you don't have the Flow plugin, make sure to open up the graph editor, head on to the value graph and just create something that looks similar to that one. So just drag these in so you can go fast in the beginning and then slow down. But that's pretty much all that's needed to do, and this is the final effect. Don't forget to turn on motion blur as well, but this is what we got. And it's a crazy effect. If you mix that with the shake as well, it will look really good. Just to show you what it will look like, I'll just do it real quick. I'll create a new adjustment layer. And what I got right here is my VFX Kit plugin, which is a plugin that allows you to add effects just like this one, super easy within just one click. For example, if I open up the shakes tab, we got a bunch of different shakes. We got a bunch of trippy ones up here, and if we scroll all the way down, we got some simple ones. So I'll go for something like a subtle vertical shake, and the video that I'm working on right now is HD, so I'll keep it at HD, and then I'll add on the subtle vertical shake, and just like that, it's applied. And it looks insane. And right now the VFX Kit does require Sapphire, but I've remade every single effect inside of the VFX Kit, and I'm going to drop a plugin free version around like the 20th of August. Like for example, this effect that you see right here that I've made is a plugin free version of this vortex blast. As you can see, this is what it looks like with Sapphire, and this is what it looks like without any third-party plugins. So it's actually insanely similar, and I've done that for every single effect inside of this plugin, and there are over 150 of those. So if you're watching this tutorial late, might as well check the link in the description and grab it for yourself. Now on to the next effect. Now for the next effect, I got this other clip right here, and I'll add on a Gaussian blur to start it off, and I'll bump up the blurriness to 18 and keyframe it, and then I'll head like, let's go all the way to the end, and I'll drag it down to 0. Next effect I'm gonna add on is a glow, and of course just a built-in glow in After Effects, since we're not using any plugins today, except for the VFX Kit of course. And I'll drag down the glow threshold, or actually drag up to 71, and the glow radius to 80, and then the glow intensity you just basically match with your clip. As you can see, it's a little bit too bright here, so I'll drag it down to like 0.5. because it won't look as bright in a second. And I'll keyframe the glow intensity, and here at the end drag it down all the way to 0. Next I'll add on a displacement map, and we can drag up the horizontal max displacement to 125 and the vertical max displacement to 130. And to get rid of these black borders right here, you just press this wrap pixels around, and if you still have this issue, just move the displacement map on top of the glow and you should get rid of it. Now let's keyframe the horizontal and vertical displacement and go all the way to the end. Let's drag them down to 0. Next effect I'll add on is a blobilize, just to get that kind of trippy look, and we'll drag down the cutaway to 0, and we can have the softness at like 15, and then here at the end we'll keyframe it and drag it up to like 250, just to get rid of the effect, just like that. Next effect I'll add on is a turbulent displace, of course, to get that kind of trippy wet look, and I'll bump up the amount to 182 and the size to 225. Once again, I'll keyframe the amount and I'll go all the way to the end, and right here I'll drag it down to 0. Next effect I'll add on is a chromatic aberration, and I'll use the built-in one in After Effects once again, so not the plugin ones. And I'll bump up the fall-off distance to 80, and I'll keyframe the aberration blue and the aberration red, and then I'll head all the way down to the end and drag it down to 0. Next effect I'll add on is a hue saturation, just to get this kind of color shift in my scene, and I'll drag up the saturation to get this kind of purple look. And we just got to drag up the glow a little bit. Since it's under every single effect, I'll have it a little bit higher, like at 1. And then I'll just keyframe the channel range, head all the way to the end, drag it down to 0. Now we only got 2 effects left to add on, and the first one is a glow. And I know we already have a glow, but this one will be a little bit softer. So I'll turn up the threshold to 82, and then I'll bump up the radius to like 150 or like 175. And then drag down the glow intensity to something like this. And then I'll keyframe the glow intensity, go all the way to the end, drag it down to 0. And now the final effect that I'll add on is an optics compensation. And before we drag up the field of view, press this reverse lens distortion button, and then we can drag it up to something like 130. So we'll have this really intense and trippy look going on, as you can see. And then you just drag it up until you're happy with it. Like I'm gonna go for something like 140, and then drag it all the way to the end, keep it at 0 here, and that's about it. So these are all of the effects that we used, and I'm going to change the resolution to 3rd just so I can play it through, because it's a really heavy effect and it looks like this, which is insane. But if you do have this part right here which shows this kind of black border, all you got to do is add on a motion tile and put it on top of every single effect. right here. And check mirror edges, just bump it up to over 100 and you can see it's completely gone now. So this is the second effect. Make sure to turn on motion blur as well, and we can mess with the graph editor. Once again, I'm gonna go for a graph that looks something like the last one. So something like this. And for the sake of this tutorial, to save time, I'm not gonna do it for every single effect. Instead, I'll use the flow plugin and just apply the exactly same curve that we used last time. But this is what it's going to look like. And yeah, it's pretty fast right now. Might as well mess with it a little bit. Do something like that instead. And just override it and apply to all. But yeah, you get the point. It's a crazy effect, and if you do have a longer clip, you might not go with the same graph that I did. But let's hop right into the third and final effect. And for the third effect, once again, I have a clip right here from this Laserdio music video, subject already rotoscoped out. And the third effect that we'll go through is this really insane one. If I open up the VFX kit, go to RotoFX. If I scroll all the way down, we have it somewhere. I'm not sure where it is, to be honest. Here, stretch time. So this is what the effect looks like with the Sapphire plugins, and the graphs are a little bit messed up now, but I'm pretty sure we can do a much smoother version right now. First off, I'll add on a Displacer Pro effect. Once again, it's a free plugin. I hope you've downloaded it by now. And what I'll do for this one is I'll keyframe the translate X and the rotation, and then I'll go halfway into my clip, like right around here, and I'll drag up the translate X to 22, the rotation to, let's do minus 30, and change the edge behavior to mirror repeat. And then here at the end, I'll drag it all down to 0, just like that. Next effect I'll add on is a Gaussian blur. Fuck, I can't spell Gaussian blur. And I'll change the blur dimensions to horizontal, and once again, keyframe at 0 right here. Bump it up to like 150 here at the peak, and then at the end, drag it down to 0. Next effect I'll add on is a chromatic aberration to get that kind of trippy look that we get from the distort chroma usually. And I'll bump up the fall off distance to 80. Right here at the middle, we'll keyframe the aberration blue and the aberration red. And at the start, we'll drag both of those down to 0. And then the next effect that we're going to use is once again a blobilize, so we can get more of that trippy feeling, and we'll drag down the cutaway to 0. And here at the middle, we'll keep the softness at 20. And at the start, I'll drag up the softness to 200, and at the end as well. Now the next effect I'll add on is a turbulent displace, and I'll keep the amount at 151 here at the middle, keyframe it, and the size I'm gonna go for 160. And here at the start, of course, you know what to do, drag it down to 0, and at the end as well. And now the next effect we'll add on is to get that kind of stretch feeling. Now the next effect we'll add on is to get that kind of stretch look, and I'll use a scale wipe to do that. And I'll change the direction to 90. And the stretch, we can drag it up to 3. So now we have the stretch to the right, and I just want to move the center a little bit to the left so we can get it like around here. So right now it's at 765, but my video is of course HD, so if you have 4K footage, these values might be a little bit different. But keyframe the stretch at 3, and here at the start, drag it down to 0, here at the end, drag it down to 0, and then we'll duplicate this effect. But this time we'll change the direction to minus 90, so the other way. And we'll move this center all the way to the other side, just like that. And now if I play it through, we should have that kind of stretch look going on. And as you can see, we do, even though it's a little bit all over the place because we haven't messed with the graph editor yet. But next and final effect that I'll use is a glow. And that's just to top everything off. So we can drag up the glow radius to 250. And the threshold to 70, and then I'll keyframe the glow intensity, and then here at the start, drag it down to 0, at the end 0 as well. And that's basically it for this effect. Now I'll actually mess with the graph editor, of course. And now if you do want to mess with the graph editor, I will go for something like this. First, open up the value graph, and I will go for something that looks a little bit like this for the first effect. And then here for the second one, I will let it load for a little bit, and then it would come in like that. So something like this for all of the effects, or at least just the most important ones like the scale wipe and the turbulent displays and Displacer Pro. Those 3 are like the main ones that we have right now. So if you're gonna do for any of the effects, then I will recommend that you do for these 3 effects. But this is pretty much the look that we get. Understand that it's a really short clip and it might look a little bit smoother if you have a longer one. But that's it for this tutorial. I'll leave the VFX kit linked in the description if you want to go and check it out for yourself. And the plugin free version might might be out when you're watching this, so go and check it out. It's going to be crazy. But thank you so much for watching if you watched this far. If you didn't, thank you anyway, but I'll see you in the next one.